I think the biggest piece of advice anyone can give you is to practice on A5 papers. It is small. It'll mess up a lot of your diagrams, a lot of your graphs and grids. I was very anxious on my D-Day. I had a bit of struggle sleeping. I was fairly anxious going to test hall itself. When the exam started, did some reading for 5 minutes, tried to completely just remember my strategies, everything that I prepared for. Hey, my name is Abhishek Acharya. I am a chemical engineering undergraduate from IIT Bombay, post which I pursued data science and data engineering at Anheuser-Busch. You probably better know it as Budweiser. My motivation for my MBA was very simple. I wanted to explore more industries and gain as many diverse experiences possible while I'm young. I love tech. I still love programming a lot. I think it's something that everyone should give it a chance if they have the opportunity. At the same time, it's a bit difficult to transition from tech to, let's say, other spaces. I thought an MBA is a great way to pivot away and explore things that I haven't explored yet. I decided to give CAT last year, and I'm currently pursuing my MBA at IIM Calcutta. Let's go over my CAT percentiles. I scored 99.78 percentile in VARC, 100 percentile in iler, and 99.57 percentile in quants. For VARC, I want to break down my advice into 4 sections. The first is reading speed. The second is note-taking. The third is option elimination. And finally, how do you review? On reading speed, I think there are many wonderful resources online in terms of improving your reading speed. I will, however, say this probably takes a few months to get into practice. I would suggest that if possible, you probably pick up good non-fiction books, probably like Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, or for example, Freakonomics, which are both very interesting to read, but also go into a lot of nuance that will actually really help build you the skills required to read fast the paragraphs you'll encounter in CAT. Secondarily, in terms of how do you take notes, I think I used to make a grid before attempting any paper in VARC. So this basically has the question numbers as rows and the options as columns. If a certain an option was incorrect, I used to cross that out. In case I thought it was correct, it used to be a tick. If I'm confused, it used to be a question mark. Note, in CAT, you'll be, giving this on a computer. So you can't really mark the options like you can in a physical paper. So it's really helped me keep track of where I was in terms of the question. And especially if I skipped a question and want to revisit it later, it helped me retain my progress to some extent. Over on this, I think when I was eliminating options, I had a few things that I used to keep in mind, mainly 3 strategies. The first is to note whether the option is directly quoted in text or inferential. I used to mark a D or an I based on the same. If it was directly quoted, that used to be very helpful, of course. The second was in terms of the degree of certainty or confidence between the answer and the paragraph it is either inferred upon or quoted on in the text. An example for the same would be that the author says that X phenomena causes Y outcome. On the other hand, the answer says X phenomena might cause Y outcome. Do note, if let's say there's a difference in a degree of certainty, that option is probably incorrect, even if let's say the certainty has increased or it has decreased. The final thing is in terms of the comprehensiveness. I think this is especially important when you're asked to give summaries of, let's say, paragraphs, or let's say talk about the key message or the key note the author talks about. This, I think, helpful both across verbal ability as well as RC sections. You'll find many options wherein you have a few things, all of which are right, that's mentioned in one answer, and you have more things mentioned in the other answer, which are also similarly right, but maybe you're a bit confused because maybe the first answer seems more right to you than the other. I think over here, I thought that, let's say, erring on the side of comprehensiveness was a better option. And at very least, in my experience, that used to give me a better outcome in most instances. The final thing is in terms of reviewing your answers. Note, I think this is very helpful in terms of, let's say, getting your RC logic in place. But it also helps in VA as well. What I used to do is whenever I'm eliminating options, I used to write down a short reason as to why I eliminated an option or why I thought a particular option was correct. And when reviewing the paper, I used to see if my reason matched with the reason provided by the answer script or, let's say, by the video answer solutions available. In the instances it matched, that's well and good, I'm probably on the right track. In the instances it doesn't, I used to reread a paragraph and understand where exactly did I go wrong, what are the factors I missed out on, and what probably are the logics that was used by them that I didn't do, and incorporate that into, let's say, my broad logic toolkit. For DLR, I think the most crucial thing anyone can practice is choosing the correct set. Over here, I had a preference of DI sets or LR sets, but I think everyone has their own preferences. The first thing I used to do was read all questions quickly, note down what questions made the most sense to me, run an order, and stick to that order in terms of attempting. The second thing is never be shy of skipping a question. 2 or 3 minutes in, if you think you're going nowhere, skip the question. There's really no point persisting, because even if you solve 2 sets correctly, you're getting more than 99.9 percentile. Now, in terms of improving accuracy of your attempts, there are a few things that really help me. For DI sets, and this applied for a few LR sets as well, I basically used to, one, note down the number of variables I had, and then try to note down all the equations I had. In most instances, you get less equations than variables, but you will probably notice a pattern in terms of which variables are you not finding equations for, or where exactly do you think there's a missing correlation or so. So that is where I used to drill down and try to find those correlations, either via experimenting or trying to see any pattern I missed out, or in terms of, let's say, rereading the question again. As long as, let's say, your number of equations match with your number of variables, the question is almost solved at that point in and of itself. The second thing is that I at least feel that it's much more important to solve one set correctly as compared to partially attempting all sets. You do need to keep in mind that, let's say, whenever you have the number type of question, there's no negative marking for that. So probably you can fill in random values if you can, let's say, guesstimate the same for them in all questions. However, it's probably worth spending 20 minutes solving one question accurately, because in case you have a full solve, you have almost near certainty that all of your options are incorrect. While, let's say, during any partial solve, the same degree of certainty doesn't exist. In terms of LR sets, what was the key for me was to get my diagrams correctly. So for example, in case you have arrangements, drawing multiple circles, filling them with the options. So for example, if you have multiple properties, for each property I used to draw a different circle and only used to overlap the properties onto one circle only in the instances where I was fairly confident that a particular position is correct. For example, when you had the time and place type of things, wherein you have 5 people going to 5 cinema halls on 5 different days, etc. Drawing the grid correctly, and I think that's very similar to Sudoku, right? You probably solve it in the same way you solve Sudoku, wherein you're writing down potential options in the square, and then based on how the square fills out, you're crossing out options. You're probably on the right track. The biggest thing though was not being afraid of failure. What I mean over here is, in many instances, both for arrangements or honestly any DLR set, you're faced with a choice wherein you think there are 2 options or 3, let's say, pathways that could be potentially correct in terms of what value you need to assume. But you don't really have any information that allows you to decide which pathway is actually the right one. I thought it was the fastest to actually go over each pathway and solve it, as compared to, let's say, trying to figure out what is the right option. And I think not being afraid of failure and just going and, let's say, solving it out is the best way to go about DLR. For quants, I think it is quite challenging to have both high accuracy as well as solving problems fast. The first thing I think that everyone should take care of is the order in which they're solving problems. I found arithmetic questions to be the easiest, which is why I always attempted them first by singling out them while going over the questions overview, after which I went to algebra and I kept geometry at the last. I think everyone can customize their orders in terms of whichever subjects or whichever topics they prefer the most. For section-specific advice, I'll break this down into 2 parts. Firstly, arithmetic, and then the other subjects. I think in terms of arithmetic, there are 2 key skills. The first is drawing diagrams for each and every type of problem you encounter. I think ratios and proportions, time and distance, or for example, even solutions and mixtures are fairly similar in terms of the problems that you get in CAT, wherein you probably have multiple steps in which multiple actions are being taken place, and at every instance your ratio is changing, or let's say your values are changing. That sounds like garbage. I want to break arithmetic down into 3 components. The first is the basic of, let's say, a question type, wherein for example in solutions and mixtures you should be familiar with how do you deal in an instance wherein mixing 2 liquids in a solution, or for example 3 liquids in a solution. The second part is keeping track of the same when you have multiple steps. I think the biggest challenge many people face in arithmetic is that when the number of steps increases, there's either a loss in accuracy or there's a problem in visualizing a particular substep that leads to the error. I think the third part then is to maintain clean notes, because I, especially myself, have also faced this challenge when I have lost track of what I was exactly solving, or I've probably not solved very cleanly and hence made an addition or a math error somewhere. For the other sections, namely algebra, number systems and geometry, I think these are 1, very formula heavy, 2, you need to remember many specific properties of certain types of equations or certain types of shapes, etc. The key I have found over here is to basically keep a ledger of the different types of questions you're encountering and run the crux or the key formula for, let's say, that particular question type. As you keep on solving more and more questions, you 1, accumulate a lot of different types, but 2, you start seeing repetition in patterns. As long as you're ready with this list, especially when you're preparing over months, you then know that there are only a few set of problems, maybe 30, 40 or different type of problems in your practice as compared to going over the entirety of the syllabus when you're revising. Finally, I think you shouldn't probably try to cover the entirety of the syllabus right now. The first thing to focus on is getting all of your strategies in place. This is in terms of 1, how you attempt questions, 2, on what exactly is the order you follow for quants, for DLR, for VRC, and 3 is to get, let's say, your strategy for skipping and option elimination in place. After that, if you have time remaining, you want to focus on maybe a few key areas. This is in terms of subjects you're good at, consolidate them and get surety in them, and probably cover a few subjects you're weak at. I think there's not enough time to go with every subject in depth, so being picky with what you choose to focus on is really, really key. All the best to everyone. In terms of the D-Day, there are a few things you can do to prepare for it. I think the biggest piece of advice anyone can give you is to practice on A5 papers. It is small. It'll mess up a lot of your diagrams, a lot of your graphs and grids. So as soon as you can prep on them, start prepping on them. The second thing is to drink a lot of water and relax. I was very anxious on my D-Day. I had a bit of struggle sleeping. I was fairly anxious going to test hall itself. But as long as you stay calm, have like your friendly interaction with your family, have fun, be chill, do not do anything stressful before the exam, don't try any last minute revisions, maybe listen to music that you like, I think you'll be in a wonderful state of mind to give the exam. Finally, during the exam itself, right? I tried to talk to other people to diffuse my nervousness. I think everyone was similarly anxious, but I think talking helped a bit. When the exam started, did some reading for 5 minutes, tried to completely just remember my strategies, everything that I prepared for. And then as soon as VRC started, I draw my grid. That's the only thing I have my focus on. For DLR, very similarly, I stick to my routine. And I think sticking to the routine is key, right? Whatever has worked for you so far will continue working for you. So for DLR, go through the question overview, select my question order. Similarly for quants, look at my question order. And I think it all falls through. I think I had a few hiccups. At times, I felt that maybe a question was difficult, I couldn't solve it. What I kept in mind was that, hey, it doesn't matter. This is a game of speed. So whenever I felt stuck in a question, I tried to skip it. Honestly, I didn't do a great job of following this advice in some sections, which I may regret a bit. But I think it is important to know that it's fine if you can't solve something. Just skip it, move on to the next question. There are enough questions to get right. As long as there is time, you can always circle back to a particular question. For everyone giving the exam this year, 1, and most importantly, believe in yourself and be confident. I think confidence is the single biggest differentiator during the exam. As long as you're able to stick to whatever has worked for you so far, the exam will go well. Secondly, I think you should still regularly give mocks, but do not take a lot of stress about their outcomes. Always remember that the people who are giving the mocks are a small subsection of the entirety of people who are giving CAT. You're probably comparing yourself with the most dedicated and the most competitive test givers. In many instances, your actual percentile is going to be much higher than, let's say, what you'll be scoring the mocks. So don't worry if, let's say, 1 or 2 mocks go bad before the test. That's not going to happen in the real paper. Thirdly, do not take too much stress. What I mean is, sure, I understand you're anxious, but don't let it affect your sleep, let it affect your diet. Go about your days as you can normally. If in case there's some drastic changes to your habits or patterns, it might affect your health. And genuinely being in good state of mind and being physically healthy is really, really key for the test. Finally, don't isolate yourself. Talk to friends, be with family, and spend time in a way that will make you happy, right?